They used to call me a disgrace, said I was a cautionary tale, the daughter who reached too far, burned too bright, and then disappeared in shame. At Christmas, they'd set a plate for my sister's dog, but not for me. At my niece's graduation, they handed out programs with everyone's name, except mine. And when my mom talked to the neighbors, she'd say I was working some clerk job, with that thin, polite smile people wear when they want to pretend they're pitying you, while cutting you right down the middle. But here's the truth, I never stopped working. I just disappeared. Because it was the only way to survive, they thought I gave up. That I'd failed. But the only thing I really gave up was needing their approval. So when my sister's new boyfriend showed up to the family barbecue, tall, clean-cut, wearing one of those federal agency polos, giving me a glance like I was part of the wallpaper, I didn't flinch. Not until he did. He froze, squinted, took a step closer. "Wait," he said. "Ma'am. Director Monroe? I served under you in Langley." The tongs nearly slipped from my hand, my mom's face went ghost white. My dad's beer bottle stopped midair. And for once, just once, nobody had anything to say. Because the daughter they'd written off as nothing was the one who outranked them all. My name is Alexander Monroe. People have called me a lot of things. Soldier. Analyst. Strategist. For a time. Director. Of a division no civilian ever hears about. Before I get into my story, though, I'd love to know you're here. Drop a simple hi in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. And if this story moves you, maybe consider subscribing. It helps stories like mine get heard, stories of quiet strength, buried deep. Thank you. Now let me tell you everything. I was alone in my apartment in Arlington, Virginia, just me, my desk lamp, and the low hum of traffic filtering in through layers of glass. My old FBI badge sat in the drawer beside me, half covered by a scarf I hadn't worn in years. I hadn't looked at that badge in a long time. But tonight, the light hit it just right, like it wanted to remind me who I was. My phone buzzed. One line lit up the screen: "Nora will be honored at the Federal Recognition Gala. Mom wants you to come. It's also Dad's 35th anniversary of service. No hi. No how are you? Just a message, cold as a weather report." I stared at it for a long minute before locking the screen. In the Monroe family, legacy wasn't just a word. It was law. My father, Alan, once consulted Homeland Security on counterterror ops. My mother, Carolyn, was a decorated high school principal with walls full of awards. And my sister, Nora, federal prosecutor, legal prodigy, golden girl. Her name floated around family get-togethers like a hymn. And then there was me, Alexander Monroe. The name they stopped mentioning. I had my own spotlight once. Started with the DOJ, then quickly moved into the bureau. I rose fast, clean record, sharp instincts. But after the Chicago standoff, the one the media turned into a headline, everything changed. They said I hesitated. Said I gave the wrong call. Someone died. And without a single question, my parents just shut the door. No more Sunday calls. No seat at Thanksgiving. My stocking disappeared from the mantel. I vanished. Quietly. Without a word, but what they never knew, I wasn't fired. I wasn't demoted. I was reassigned, off the books. Brought into a Black Ops domestic unit reporting straight to the Attorney General. I led Sentinel, one of the most classified operations in domestic intel history. And I led it well, but I couldn't tell them that. Not then. Maybe not ever. I stood and looked in the mirror, really looked. At the new lines around my eyes. The stillness in my expression. I hadn't married. Hadn't stayed in touch. Nobody called me Lex anymore. I was Director Monroe. Division 5, and that invitation, that wasn't about family. It was bait. A test. A show, I stared at my reflection and nodded, not because I needed to prove anything to them, but because I needed to prove something to myself. Would they still recognize me? I rented a car and drove through familiar streets in Cleveland. The storefronts looked the same, faded signs, boarded windows. Like time had just stopped. The venue was near Federal Square, the flag still fluttering overhead like some illusion of unity. I didn't wear a uniform. Just a dark blouse and slacks. No insignia. No declarations. I wasn't there to make a scene, but I couldn't stop my mother's voice from echoing in my head, words I'd overheard once, back in 2017, when she didn't know I was standing in the hallway. Some people are born to be remembered, she told a friend. And some people should know they're not. I never said a word. Just froze. And somehow, that moment hit harder than any explosion I'd ever trained for. I arrived right on time, not early. Not late. The Federal Civic Hall was polished to a mirror shine. Dignitaries funneled through security. No one waited for me. No one looked my way. I was a shadow in a place I used to belong. The reception table had a gold-lettered sign, honoring the service of Nora Monroe and Alan Monroe. Not one mention of me. Not even a polite afterthought. I handed off my coat. The logistics assistant gave a tight smile, scanned his list. Miss Monroe, right? He asked, squinting. You're at table 12. Overflow seating for unscheduled guests. I smiled. Of course. Table 12 was tucked behind the coffee station. 2 steps from a recycling bin. I could already hear the espresso machine grinding and melting ice sloshing in a nearby punch bowl. Next to me? A woman who used to babysit Nora during camp. And a guy from her law school who introduced himself to me 3 times like I was a stranger. To them? I probably was. The room dimmed. Stage lights flared. And then, she walked in. Nora, tailored navy dress. Diamond studs. Her walk, measured, practiced. Like every step had been choreographed for impact, she took the podium. I'm deeply honored to be recognized alongside my father, she said. And grateful to my colleagues, mentors, and of course, my family. Especially those who've stood by me through every challenge. No one here ever let poor judgment get in the way of progress. It was a smooth line. Polished. But it hit like a slap. I didn't blink. Didn't flinch, just sipped my flat soda, like it didn't taste like spite. The applause rolled through the hall like a tide, loud, performative, exactly what you'd expect. I noticed my father clapping just a little longer than the others. His face stayed unreadable, like a statue pretending to be proud. My mother wiped her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, Nora's initials, of course. Then it happened. A man in a sharply pressed FBI dress uniform started weaving through the crowd. Not wandering. Moving with intent. Head high. His eyes scanned until they locked with mine. I recognized him immediately. Reed Callahan. One of mine. I hadn't seen him since the final debrief after Operation Sentinel. He stopped 2 feet away from my table, straightened his spine, and said, clear enough for everyone to hear, Director Monroe. I served under you. It's an honor to see you again. The whole room froze. The woman next to me dropped her fork. The man on my other side went wide-eyed, mouth halfway open. Nora's head whipped around. My father's hand stalled mid-clap. My mother's wine glass tipped dangerously in her grip. I looked up at Reed, didn't stand, didn't smile. Just met his gaze and gave the smallest nod. Thank you, Agent Callahan. He saluted, protocol. Quiet. But in that room, it might as well have been a cannon shot. In that one moment, I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the daughter they edited out of the holiday card. I was Director Monroe. And everyone saw it. Reed waited by the velvet curtain in the dim hallway just outside the reception area. The air smelled like cologne, aging carpet, and whatever the caterers had been serving for hors d'oeuvres. His face, though, serious. Unsure. Not a courtesy visit, "We've got a situation," he said, voice low. "Go on," I replied, already feeling my stomach coil tight. "There's been a breach in the WitnessNet system. The access originated from the Cleveland office." My pulse didn't jump, but my body tensed all over. WitnessNet wasn't just a database, it was the digital spine of the federal witness protection program. If that system got touched by the wrong hands, people could die. Whole lives unraveled. Families exposed. Agents burned. He handed me a tablet, already unlocked. I scanned the access logs, timestamps, authentication tokens, IP address, and then I saw the line that made everything stop. Device owner, Nora Monroe. I turned slowly to read. "Are you absolutely sure?" 99%, he said. "But it gets worse. The authentication token used, it belonged to Samuel Blake." Samuel Blake. The name hit like a shot of ice down my spine. Nora had praised him publicly more than once. Called him a pillar of legal ethics. He was a senior federal prosecutor, sharp-suited, always camera-ready. Just led a high-profile case involving defense contract embezzlement. To the public, he was a watchdog for justice. I'd always seen something else. Why would Blake have access to WitnessNet? I asked aloud, mostly to myself. Reed shook his head. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. Either Nora's being used. Or," I cut in, "she's in deeper than she realizes." He nodded slowly. "I don't believe she's a mole. But someone's definitely using her clearance." I took a breath, looked him in the eye. "I'm staying." "Under what pretense?" "Family," I said, flatly. "Let them think I'm here for a little sisterly bonding." He gave a dry chuckle. "Not technically a lie." "Not yet," I said, slipping the tablet into my coat. "But it might become one." We split up before the next round of speeches. I re-entered the main hall just as dessert plates were being cleared. The hum of small talk buzzed around me. Nora spotted me across the room, her eyes narrowed, like she knew something had shifted. She wasn't wrong. My mother intercepted me near the table. She held a half-empty champagne flute, wearing that same polite, semi-interested look she always used when forced to stand near someone she pretended not to know. "Well," she said, voice high and casual. "Isn't it funny? Someone remembered you used to do something." I held her gaze. "Not everyone forgets, Mom." Then I walked past her. Didn't wait for a reply. Her silence followed me like smoke, but my mind was already working. Mapping connections. Calculating risks. This wasn't about family anymore. This was about exposure. And whether she knew it or not, Nora had just become the center of something way bigger than herself. The next morning, sunlight pushed through the blinds of my motel room, striping the cheap carpet in dusty gold. The old TV played quietly in the corner. Local news, and there she was, Nora Monroe. Smiling at a press conference. Perfectly framed. Voice clear and clipped. "The victims of government negligence deserve more than sympathy. They deserve action." I took a sip of motel coffee. Bitter. Burnt. Perfect. The segment cut to a series of interviews. One in particular made my grip tighten. Nora again. One-on-one. A soft-lit podcast show from D.C. "She used to work at the DOJ," she said, smile easy. "But Lex never really fit into a culture of accountability." I didn't react, didn't throw the mug. Didn't curse. I'd seen the clip before. Saved it even. Not out of spite. But to remember, that same sister, the one who used to cry in my arms after bullies called her names, now used my reputation as her punchline. Reed and I split up our duties. He combed surveillance logs. I headed for the federal building downtown. No badge. No sirens. Just my old credentials, a borrowed favor, and a little quiet authority. Samuel Blake met me in the cafe on the ground floor. His handshake was too firm, too polished. His smile, too still. "You must be Nora's sister," he said, voice warm. "She talks about you all the time. Bit of a legend." I smiled without smiling. "That so?" He stirred his coffee slowly, eyes never leaving mine. "She's got integrity. Heart. Maybe a little naive, but endearing." "Naive," I repeated, flatly. "Not usually a compliment in this building." Blake chuckled. "Oh, Director Monroe. No one keeps their halo intact forever." He said it lightly, but his eyes gleamed in that way people like him never quite hide. I let the silence stretch. Drank my coffee. Watched him squirm under the stillness. When I left, my phone buzzed. "Reed, sending you something. You're not going to like it." Seconds later, the video arrived, grainy. Parking garage. Timestamped 3 weeks ago, Blake. Looking around like he knew better. Then, from the shadows, someone else emerged, tall. Gray hair. Tan trench coat, Orson Gray. I hadn't heard that name in years. Gray was flagged back in Operation Iron Maze. A logistics conduit for the Veil, an elusive domestic syndicate with encrypted accounts, shell companies, and deep ties to both contractors and Congress. We never caught him. He disappeared in 2014, until now. Blake met with him. Shook hands. Smiled. "And Nora?" "She worked under Blake." I stared out across the Cleveland skyline. Clouds breaking just enough to let in a little light. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was war. I met Nora at the old Candela site, an abandoned FBI training facility buried in layers of forgotten history and classified dirt. Officially, it was condemned. To me, it had once been a sanctuary. A place where agents too deep in the field could come up for air without being seen. It felt fitting to bring her here. She arrived in a dusty rental car, stepping out with the same blazer she used to wear during her law clerk days, now buttoned tight like armor. The wind picked up as she walked across the cracked pavement, eyes wary but still curious. No hugs. No small talk. I handed her a sealed folder, one of the old-style DOJ briefing envelopes, thick with pages that could change a life in 10 seconds. "This the witness you're protecting?" I asked. She opened the file, her eyes scanned the first page, then shot up to the photo paper clipped to the top. A grainy still image, timestamped Mexico City, 2018. A man in tactical gear, face exposed, aiming an assault rifle. Behind him, a family kneeling on a blood-streaked concrete floor. "That's him," she whispered. "Sure." She nodded once, silently. "Blake told me he escaped a cartel. Said he had intel. That he was a survivor." "He's not," I said. "That man's not a survivor, he's a commander. One of the highest-ranking field operatives for the Veil." Nora's face turned pale. "But we gave him clearance," she murmured. "I signed off on it. Full protection." I reached into my coat and pulled out a small, encrypted recorder. Clicked play. Blake's voice filled the empty space between us. Calm. Smug. "She's our most valuable pawn. Keep her righteous. Feed her just enough truth to make her think she's saving the world. She's young. The system will eat her before she even realizes who she's shielding." The silence that followed felt heavier than the concrete under our feet. Nora didn't cry. She didn't argue, she just stood there, hollow. A woman realizing she'd been weaponized by the people she trusted most. "I thought I was helping someone," she said finally. "I really thought I was doing the right thing." "There's no justice in saving someone," I told her, "if you never ask who dies because of it." Her lip trembled. This wasn't the prosecutor. This wasn't the speech giver or the gala queen. This was my little sister, the one I used to walk home from school. The one who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares. And she was breaking. She turned to leave. "Wait," I said, stepping closer. I pulled a small fitness tracker from my pocket, the kind marketed as a health monitor. I clasped it gently around her wrist. What's this? Precaution, I said. Monitors vitals and location. She blinked. You don't trust me? I trust you enough to try to keep you alive. She looked down at the band. Didn't take it off. Didn't argue. That night, long after the shadow swallowed Candela whole, Nora's phone lit up. She stepped outside to take the call. Blake's voice came through the line, cool and calm. I know who you met today. Evelyn Monroe has a long history of ruining careers. You really think she wouldn't sacrifice her own sister to protect herself? Nora didn't respond. But her grip on the phone tightened. And for the first time in years, there wasn't fear in her eyes, there was fire. 2 days later, my mother called me. She sounded soft, almost rehearsed. It's time we sit down together, she said. Like a family. I didn't believe her. Not for a second, but I said yes. Sometimes, the fastest way to reveal a trap is to walk straight into it. The meeting place was our old house in Lakewood. I hadn't been back in over a decade. But the smell hadn't changed, lemon cleaner, and cold distance. My father greeted me with a big smile that didn't touch his eyes. Nora stood nearby, silent, her expression unreadable. Before dinner, I walked down the hall to what used to be my bedroom. Everything had been staged, bed made, bookshelf dusted, a framed DOJ photo of me on the desk. I ran a finger along the edge of the frame. The dust outline told me it hadn't been there long. This wasn't nostalgia. It was theater. I walked back toward the dining room but paused near the air vent. My father's voice drifted through, low and sharp. She'll be here. I don't want any part of it after tonight. It was all the confirmation I needed. Dinner was civilized. Roast chicken. Potatoes. A bottle of Merlot none of us had ever liked, but always kept on hand for show. They made conversation. Dad talked golf. Mom talked church. Nora stayed quiet. Then, my father cleared his throat and set a thick envelope on the table. You don't have to pretend anymore, he said. We know what you've been doing. I opened the envelope. Inside were internal memos from WitnessNet, except they were fake. Forged. Carefully crafted to make it look like I'd been altering identities, manipulating files. A whistleblower, maybe. A rogue agent, trying to rewrite her reputation. Where had they gotten this? I looked up. How long have you been following me? I asked. Nora's voice was sharp. You bugged me. You planted surveillance on me. I protected you, I said, by tracking me like a suspect? She snapped. She reached into her purse, ripped the health band off her wrist, and slammed it on the table like it burned her. What are you doing, Evelyn? Rebuilding your name by destroying mine? I'm doing what I've always done, I said calmly. Cleaning up what the system overlooks, including you. That was when the lights went out. Pitch black swallowed the room. A split second later, the front door exploded. Boots. Screams. Chaos. 3 armed men stormed inside, black tactical gear, masks, rifles slung low. They weren't bluffing her, one of them said, pointing directly at me. She knows too much. And the others? Another asked, nodding toward my family, no longer useful. They came for me first. I let them, fell backward off my chair, hit the floor hard, but not before I pressed the panic node stitched into the seam of my blazer. I'd never counted on Nora to wear the tracker forever. I knew she'd take it off eventually, that's why I'd built a backup. A second transmitter hidden in my coat's lining. Set to ping read the moment I activated it. The men didn't notice. They dragged me up roughly, shoved the barrel of a gun against the back of my neck. My mother screamed. My father froze, hands raised. Nora just stood there. You thought we wouldn't find you? The man snarled. Director Monroe, he spat. Traitor to the cause. I never joined your cause, I said through clenched teeth. Exactly, he whispered, and raised his rifle. But from outside, sirens, signal jammers cut out. Tactical lights flashed through the windows. They had set their trap. I'd just sprung mine. and as the chaos erupted around us, I looked at Nora, really looked. And what I saw wasn't a scared little sister, it was a woman finally waking up to the battlefield we'd both been standing on for years, not out there, but right here, at our own dinner table. When Reed Callahan received the distress signal, he didn't call it in, not through official channels. Not everyone inside the bureau could be trusted anymore. That was a lesson he'd learned the hard way. Instead, he made 2 calls. The first was to Maria Torres, an encryption specialist with clearance levels that didn't technically exist. The second was to Daniel Kim, a former Navy SEAL who believed in action before paperwork. What are we walking into? Maria asked as she pulled gear from a hidden compartment in the back of the unmarked SUV. Reed didn't sugarcoat it. A network that knows us better than we know ourselves. And a family being used as bait, because they don't know a damn thing. Back at the house, I was tied to a rusted support beam in the basement, hands bound tight with tactical-grade rope. Mouth dry from adrenaline. Duct tape. Military knots. Voices just out of reach. The veil wasn't there to intimidate us, they were there to erase us. One of them, masked, tall, built like a linebacker, recognized me. You ran Sentinel, he said. I followed every op. Then you just disappeared. I wasn't gone, I said evenly. I was selected to vanish. He laughed. Not invisible anymore, are you? They didn't plan to kill us quietly. That would have been too simple, they were staging a domestic terror act. Explosives wired throughout the house. A pre-written manifesto. A trail of false evidence. Everything tied up in a neat little story that would end with a boom, a few headlines. And no real questions. We'd become a cautionary tale for the evening news. Above us, the floor creaked. I strained to listen. Nothing. No Nora. No voices. Was she okay? Was she hiding? Calculating? Or had they already turned her? Then Reed's voice crackled softly in my ear, the one piece of tech they hadn't found. The subdermal mic stitched into the collar of my blazer buzzed to life. Evelyn, new intel. The mole is Victor Crane. Everything stopped inside me. Crane, he was the same man I'd blocked from promotion years ago after he tampered with evidence in a trafficking case. He'd vanished from the bureau after that. And now? He was here. Feeding intel to the Veil. It all clicked. He was the one who doctored the fake WitnessNet files my father had shown me. The one who leaked my location. He knew the system. He knew me, and he knew how to turn trust into a weapon. Outside, Reed's team was already positioning. Maria was in a surveillance van 3 blocks away, overriding city cameras and jamming backup channels. Daniel prepped the entry gear and breach points. They've wired the place, Reed said. 3 charges. D-shaped configuration. Not random, symbolic. Classic Veil signature. How long? 12 hours. They'll blow it by sunrise. I stared at the small blinking LED in my jacket cuff. It wasn't hope. It wasn't backup, it was an order. 3:11 a.m., the kind of dark that feels ancient. Heavy. Like the world forgot to turn the page. The basement stank of mildew, dust, and the sharp bite of chemicals, plastic explosives. My wrists burned from the rope. I heard my family behind me. Shallow breathing. Stifled panic. Even my father was quiet now. Maybe it finally hit him. He couldn't buy his way out of this one. I ignored everything, focused on my heartbeat. The rhythm. The countdown. Reed's voice came through again. We're breaching from the north side. Lights out in 40. You'll have 90 to reach and disarm the first node. I didn't ask if they'd make it. I didn't ask if I would. There were no guarantees now. Just the job. 40 seconds later, the lights cut. Darkness swallowed the basement. I moved fast, slipped the blade from the heel of my boot, sliced through the rope. 2 passes and snap. I was free. I hit the ground rolling and crawled toward the old water heater, where I'd hidden a thermal emitter hours earlier. I activated it. It spoofed the motion sensors long enough for me to reach the hallway unnoticed. Daniel broke in through the storm cellar, fast and silent. I saw his silhouette cut across the shadows, a knife in one hand, a flash grenade in the other. Maria's voice crackled into my earpiece, 3 nodes. Washer, kitchen island, upstairs study. Standard detonation sequencing but not standard wiring. Walk me through. First nodes behind the washer. White wire, but there's a crossover current. You'll have to kill power first. No time, I said. I used my left hand, the one that still throbbed from an old fracture in Chicago, and clipped the wire. No boom, still breathing. I moved again, low, fast, deliberate. Footsteps thundered down the stairs. One of them spotted me. Rifle raised, I dove left, rolled, pulled my last weapon from under a loose floor tile, a Glock I'd swapped in place of my mother's antique pistol. I fired once. Low, hit the man in the thigh. He collapsed, screaming. I moved in, tore off the mask. Victor Crane, his face twisted, not in pain, but in fury. You always thought you were better. He spat. That's why you burned me. You burned yourself, I said. I just made sure you didn't take anyone down with you. You'll never win, he growled. This system doesn't want people like you. Then I'll build one that does. I turned back to the explosives. Second node, disarmed. One left. I felt someone behind me but didn't turn. You're going to die for people who never believed in you? My father's voice. I didn't pause. Not for them. So I don't become the person you always thought I was. And then, Nora, she knelt beside me, out of breath, eyes wide but steady. In her hand, a small remote device. I swiped this off Crane before they tied me up, she said. You don't have to do this alone. For the first time, I saw her not as my shadow or my mistake, but as a woman standing next to me. On her own feet, together, we disabled the final charge. The lights flickered back to life. Reed's voice crackled through. We're in. Targets down. All clear. I stood slowly. Blood on my sleeves. Breath catching, Reed met me at the porch, nodding. All safe. I looked past him at the sky, the stars fading above a broken house. No, I said quietly. Now, it's safe to begin. 10 days had passed since the raid on the house. Since the charges were defused, the lies exposed, and the faces behind the masks were finally brought into the light. I walked into the congressional hearing room not expecting applause. Not wearing a uniform. No medals. No armor. Not even my hair tied back in the usual tactical knot. Just me, standing in front of the same system that once decided I was no longer worthy of a voice. The nameplate on the desk read, Alexander Monroe, Director, FBI Division 5. I didn't start with a war story. I didn't lead with the operation, or with my sister, or with Crane. I didn't open with blame, I started with a question, spoken low. But sharp enough to split marble. Why do we treat silence like guilt? Why do we let perception become truth? The room held still. Then I turned to the man at the head of the oversight committee, the same one who signed off on the review that stripped me of my authority years ago. When the system wants to bury someone, I said, it doesn't need a trial. It only needs a whisper. And then, I told them everything, Maria's decrypted files, Reed's chain of custody, Nora's testimony. I didn't just hand over intel, I laid out the infrastructure. Every manipulated protocol. Every planted leak. Every false flag wrapped in national interest, but I didn't paint myself as a victim. In fact, I told them the opposite. I was part of this system, I said. I played the game. I kept secrets. I compromised under the flag of duty. That's on me. I didn't ask for my job back. I proposed something else, something riskier, a full-scale restructure of WitnessNet. Oversight transferred to an independent civilian board, no political appointments, no campaign ties, no re-election cycles. Just eyes that wouldn't flinch. Of course, they pushed back. They always do. Then I played the final piece, a video file. Grainy but clear. From a pin camera hidden in the base of a lamp in Victor Crane's office. In it, his voice. His face. A cash transaction routed through a dummy corporation tied to the Helix Foundation, a so-called nonprofit praised for border security innovation. In truth, it was the Vale's financial washing machine. They arrested him while I stood at the podium. Crane didn't resist, he just looked at me, pale, broken, and said, "You win this time." Didn't say a word, he was already done taking up space in my head. After the hearing, I didn't wait around. I didn't go out the front entrance for cameras or headlines. I slipped out through a side hallway, where my mother stood, hands folded, eyes too tired to fake the old sharpness. No apology. No hug, just one sentence. "If you're what the system couldn't look at, maybe I've been closing my eyes too long too." Not closure, but a crack. My father said nothing. But he handed me a photo, the same one from my DOJ swearing-in, except now the frame was new, and at the bottom a brass engraving read, "Alexandra Monroe, never erased." I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just nodded and left. No applause. No flashbulbs. No documentary deal. I declined the interviews, the memoir offers, the streaming pitches. I walked away from the noise. The same noise that once tried to drown me. Instead, I became something else, a guide, a quiet one. I mentored at NOS. Sat in on school boards. Taught ethical risk assessment to teenagers who thought justice was something you find in action movies. It's not, I told them. It's something you build. Slowly. Alone, if you must. One day, I opened my inbox, subject line, "I'm not scared anymore." From Nora. She'd attached a photo, standing on stage at a federal protection conference. Not as a case study, but as the keynote speaker, not being used, asking questions, building structure. My reply was short, "I always believed in you. But I'm glad now that you believe in yourself." That night, I sat in my tiny office in Arizona, no flag on the wall. No intercom. Just a quiet space with a desk and a view of the mountains. On the highest shelf sat a sealed folder, the original file on the Veil. I hadn't turned it in, not because I was hiding it, because I needed the reminder. Justice isn't a moment, it's a process. People ask me what I do now. I tell them, I used to work in the system, now I stand outside of it, so I can see it more clearly. I don't give many speeches these days, but sometimes, when the sun dips behind the horizon, and the Arizona sky turns that impossible shade of deep blue, I sit alone by the fence out back. No cameras. No applause, just silence, mine, and this time. I'm not afraid of it, because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do, is not shout, not fight, not prove. Sometimes, the strongest thing, is to quietly stand in the truth you bled for. Not all victories are loud, some arrive in silence, in dignity, in the choice to begin again, on your own terms. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment. Or just say hi. I'd love to know where this story finds you, and if you're still here, still listening, thank you, for seeing people like me, for making silence something we no longer have to fear.